Okay, so we're on week 3, and the theme this week is Take It Easy. And we're talking, if I just to remind you about our life story. What is our story? And all of us have a story. My story is 66 years long so far. And when we share our story, nobody wants to hear all 66 years. So I got to tell them the
My
good.
story is double less than yours.
That's called half.
Whatever.
All right, so let's go ahead and look at the video.
Live in an amazing world of technology. Technology solves so many of our problems and makes life so much easier. Think about it. I can just adjust the temperature of my home from 3,000 miles away. My kids can FaceTime grandparents whenever they want. I can find the closest gas station from any road in the nation with a few taps on a screen. It's amazing. When you think about it, nearly every device we own has the same purpose: to make life easier. And whether it's the apps on our phones or the appliances in our kitchens, I think we can all agree on one thing: easy is good. But there's a side effect of this easy is good mentality. While we believe that easy is good, our brains also draw the natural conclusion that not easy is not good. Isn't that true? With all the modern conveniences that we have, it can be tempting to think that when something is complicated or difficult or requires some work for us, it must not be good. And that is the problem. Because not easy things happen to all of us. We've all had people we love die. We've all had good friends that break our heart. We've been so frustrated with our kids that we yell. We've become so discouraged that we felt like the only option is to give up. We all have had tons of experiences that we can file under not easy. So when our motto is easy is good, it can be tempting to make the assumption that if God allows us to experience something not easy, then it must mean God is not good and that his intentions for us are not good. For a lot of us, this concept is exactly what stands in the way of us having a close relationship with God. We've experienced some not easy moments or some downright awful ones. And maybe in the middle of those moments, it has led us to believe that God isn't on our side. That either he isn't as powerful as we once thought, or maybe worse, he isn't as good as we once thought. At the same time, I think we all recognize this truth: not everything that's difficult is bad. Isn't it true that most of what's truly worth doing in life is rarely easy or problem free?
Yeah.
Talk to any entrepreneur and they'll tell you that success didn't happen overnight. If success happened at all, it was after they mortgaged their house, worked too many 90-hour weeks, and didn't take a salary for 3 years. And what about raising kids? The only people who think raising kids are easy are people who have no kids. But if you've been awake through those sleepless nights, fought with a toddler over what shirt he's going to wear, watched your middle school daughter cry herself to sleep, picked your son up after being cut for the 3rd time from the football team, then you understand hard. Nothing about those situations is easy, but they are worth it. Absolutely. Some of the best parts of life are going to come with pain, difficulty, and problems. So where does that leave us? If easy is good, but not easy isn't necessarily bad, what are we supposed to aim for? Is it possible to have a good life story even when it isn't easy?
Yep.
What do we do when God allows our lives to be something other than the easy, carefree story we hoped for? The Apostle Paul wrote about this very idea. In fact, Paul believed if we prayed for and sought after an easier, safe life, then we'd actually be missing out on one of the very things God uses to give us a better story. We've talked about how Paul's circumstances were far from easy. He endured jail, torture, beatings, and rejection. To live in an empire that was hostile to Christians was the very opposite of easy. Yet, in spite of these circumstances, Paul wrote this: "Not only so, but we also glory in our sufferings, because we know that suffering produces perseverance, perseverance, character, and character, hope." Paul started by saying that we can have hope, which sounds pleasant, but then he followed with the fact that it will come through suffering, which is not so pleasant. I mean, who rejoices in another failed attempt at dating, child who won't sleep through the night, a missed job opportunity, a miscarriage, the death of a parent? Rejoicing isn't anyone's first reaction. Yet in the middle of difficult circumstances, Paul didn't tell us to pray for an easier life or to run away from a challenging life. He told us that there's a way to live the best life in the middle of it. And he shared that when we endure difficult situations, it will lead to three things: perseverance, character, and hope. Paul says that suffering, pain, difficulties aren't always bad. In fact, the more of them we face, the more endurance we develop. You understand the idea of endurance if you've ever trained for a race or played sport. The whole reason for workouts is to produce endurance, to train your body to go further and get through more than you thought it could. In the same way, when we choose to do difficult things, we develop a different kind of endurance. In other words, when you go through something hard, you become the kind of person who can get through something hard. You become stronger. You have more character. And knowing you've gotten through something before can give you the hope that you can get through it again. But don't miss this. Paul said in order to gain perseverance, character, and hope, we have to go through suffering, not around it. To become the kind of person we want to be, we have to go through the moments that are going to get us there. In fact, he even took things one step further. Paul's desire for us was that we rejoice in our sufferings, because we know about the good things God was growing in us as a result. Now, if you think this sounds impossible, you aren't alone. Rarely does anyone want to rejoice in suffering. We want to remove suffering. But Paul knew something we tend to forget, that change for any of us is difficult. We have to be forced to change. We need help to grow. Look back over your life and you'll see that it was the hard times when you matured as a person. It was there in the pain that you grew closer to God. Sure, you grew and matured some in easy times, but the hard times were the times that really changed you. Suffering and difficulty are two of the best teachers to change us, to shape us, and move us all in the direction of making us more like Jesus. God didn't promise us an easy life or that he would remove all of our obstacles when we started following him. But he has promised us that he would be present with us as we walk through those obstacles. Not only that, God has promised that the difficulties in life and the suffering we experience do not get the final word. Paul said that endurance produces character. Character is about what you get through. It's about who you are and who you are becoming. Every time you face a challenge head on, you become a person of character who isn't afraid of tough challenges. Now, that doesn't mean God will never come through for us or will never remove difficulty in our lives, or that we should stop praying for suffering to end. We should always feel free to ask God to help us to change our circumstances or to remove our pain. Jesus did before he died, so we can too. And sometimes God removes the suffering, and sometimes he doesn't. You may have to keep looking for the job, battling the crisis, dealing with pain. But you can do that knowing this: your difficulty is never there because God doesn't love you or isn't with you. He is with you in every hard situation. And as awful as those hard things are, he is using those hard things to produce good in you. The Apostle Paul knew the truth we all have to learn. The path to a better life is rarely an easy path. The difficult things in your life that you feel like they might defeat you are actually the very things God can use to grow you if you surrender them to him. What we think is limiting our life, God is leveraging to help us live a better life. So what would your life look like if you took this truth seriously? How would your life begin to change if you believe the difficult path was the one that led to a better life. I think if we began to embrace the possibility that the pain and difficulty could bring us endurance, character, hope, we'd find that we're moving in the direction of living a better story. So, what suffering or hardship you hope God would simply remove from your life? Being jobless, the increasing amount of debt, infertility, tension in your marriage, a wayward child, fading friendship. In life, we'll all face hardship or suffering, but God doesn't want us to hide from it. He wants us to rejoice in it because He is producing something far greater in value: perseverance, hope, character. I want to challenge us all to do something. And before I say it, I want you to know I'm aware it isn't easy. Some of you have been through some really difficult and hard times. Some of you are right now in the middle of them. But even if this is an immensely difficult season, I want you to at least try. My challenge is this: right now in your head, thank God for whatever hardship you're enduring. Here's why this step is such a big deal. When we choose to give thanks for our tough circumstances rather than avoid them, something powerful happens in our hearts. Something starts to grow in us. Could you imagine being a person of perseverance? That no matter what the circumstances are, you knew you could fight through to the end, believing that God was with you and He was up to something good in you. Could you imagine being a person character? That you have the kind of character that knows you can get through this moment because you've gotten through tough moments before. The kind of character that is sure God is with you, even when things seem dark. The type of character that causes you to leverage your pain to help someone else. And what about hope? Could you imagine having the kind of hope that remains regardless of job loss, relational crisis, financial fail? Could you imagine having an unwavering hope that God will use your pain for good? The kind of hope that believes God would use the difficulty to change and transform you into the person you ultimately want to be. You see, it's possible. But the more we believe this truth, the more we might even come to believe that we don't necessarily want ease. We want better. We want whatever it takes for God to change and shape us into the people He sees that we can be. We want to live a better story. God hasn't promised us an easy life. He has promised to be with us in this life and to use every difficult circumstance to grow us. What if you believed God was with you all the time? What if you believed His eyes were always on you? What if you believed that no matter the outcome, He will be holding you? Believing those things can help you live a better story. We can live with less fear and less frustration because we won't spend so much time and energy striving for ease. So instead of asking God to make your path easier, ask Him to show you where He is in the middle of it. Remember that in the same way, Jesus' suffering led to the pouring out of God's love. Your suffering can do the same. When you're hurting, the holes in your heart allow God to pour in His love and peace more deeply. And when things are difficult, if you keep turning to God, you'll discover the fuller, richer life that Jesus promises. It will not be easy, but it can help make the story of your life better than you ever imagined.
Okay, now let's see what I'm. Still have Jamil. I have Chuck and me. And then Chuck's cousin and Daniel are here. Okay, let's go back into share screen one more time. So here are our discussion questions, mostly for Jamil. Hopefully he can read that. There's 7 discussion questions that goes with this video. Let's see. So what does the video today have to do with our story? What was our story, or the idea of having a story have to do with this particular video?
It was about the same thing I was talking about earlier, Major, where we try to find God, you asking God for help, but he don't see you because you don't see him, you know? Yeah. Let that one go through. Oh, no, pick that one, but let this one go through. Yeah, I got one more. The last one got to get put up.
So the idea of today's lesson is that if we want to make our story better, if we want our path to be a better story, it's usually not easy. You know, well, if you already got a great job and
There's
you got,
earache.
you got all kinds of things going for you, and someone says, "Oh, let's make a change," and you know you've got the background, you got the references, so you get an even better job. It's kind of easy compared to some people. So it's not always easy. In fact, it's usually hard. You know, if you're going to become the best at something, at a new job, you just can't stay home watching Gilligan's Island reruns. He loves that example.
I love Gilligan's Island.
Usually end up saying that example.
Well, I mean, but it really, if you're trying to do something important in your life, is it going to help you to stay home and watch TV? Yeah. So it's going to be hard. It's going to mean, oh, okay, I got to go to school, or oh, okay, I got to learn this new thing at work. I might have to stay later. You know, there can be all kinds of reasons why it's going to be hard. But that's life, and that's if you think back to Adam and Eve, you remember they sinned in the garden, and what did God tell them? Now you can't just pick fruit off of a tree. Now you got to work hard to till the land. You know, it's going to be tough from now on, and that's still true to this day. Of course, some people seem to be more blessed than others, and the psalmist even writes, how come the bad people are getting all the good blessings? And the answer is simply, the other people don't matter, you matter. There's no comparing the blessings that each of us get. And what about the rain? Rain falls on the just fellows and on the unjust fellows. God isn't up there going, oh, they're bad people, no rain for them. You know, so we all have the same opportunity. And yeah, some people, it's just blind luck.
Yes, sir. See you later.
Sometimes, you know, people work hard and they're blessed with just luck. You know, Coley and I talk sometimes about Elon Musk, and some say, oh man, that guy works so hard, and he's so smart, where other people say dumb luck, or it's something in between. Do you think that he did something special to become a billionaire? Well, I think he did something with his time that the rest of us aren't doing. Am I going to become a billionaire working at the Salvation Army? Am I going to become a billionaire living in my retirement house in Olympia? Not unless I do something that makes that possible. If I become a successful YouTuber, am I going to become a billionaire? Probably not, but I could become a millionaire if I got lucky a little bit. If it were that easy, or if there were a secret formula for being successful, then everybody would do it.
Inheritance, call it as that.
Well, there's that.
That's true, yeah.
The idea of inheritance. So all of our stories are a little different. Some of us, our stories are based a little bit on luck, maybe a little bit on inheritance. There's an idea that everyone has assets in their lives, especially as they grow up. So what kind of assets are more valuable? Well, all right, I've got $1 million as a 12-year-old. Well, okay, I guess that's an asset. But the kind of things that make a difference is I have two parents when I'm 12 years old or 15, or whatever it might be. Or I only have one parent. Or both my parents died, or both my parents abandoned me, or whatever it might be. Those are the kind of assets that help us to succeed. I know, Jamil, that you have people that you look up to, like a mother or a father, and that's an important asset in your life. So let's take a look at the questions and see if we can get some more out of this video. Here's a question for you. He talked a little bit about technology making life easier. So what piece of technology do you have that does the most to make your life convenient and easy? And you could go back 100 years and come up with technologies, or it could be something recent. What did people do before we had motor vehicles, before we had cars? They walked, or they had a horse and buggy. Like my great grandfather, he was a junk collector in southern Kansas in the early 1900s. And what he did is he took his horse and wagon around town collecting junk. Hey, you want to get rid of these cans? I'll take them. And then he would sell the junk to someone. Okay, that's kind of cool. But without a horse and buggy, he couldn't walk around town and collect all that stuff. He had a technology, which now we take for granted. When cars became available, people could travel. People could pick stuff up for their farm a lot easier than they could before, even with a horse and buggy. So you could go that way, or more recent. How has the cell phone made your life more convenient and easy? Who doesn't have a cell phone? Even homeless people manage to get a cell phone because it's almost required to have one to do business today. So what is it about this cell phone that makes your life more convenient? Mass communication. Okay, mass communication. When I was a kid, a cell phone was a phone booth. Now that you'd be hard pressed to find a phone booth. But if I wanted to call my girlfriend, even when I was 17, 18, I couldn't just pick something out of my pocket and say, hey, babe. No, I would have to walk down the street and find a payphone, a phone booth. Or if I'm driving, there's a phone booth on the corner. I could pull my car over and use that phone booth. Now, if I were doing the same thing today, if I were 17 years old, it's this easy. Hey, babe. And we see it all the time. Boyfriends, girlfriends, parents, in anyone, the person that you love is right at the tip of your fingers, right here. Can you think of anything else that might be a technology that's made your life easier?
Internet in general.
Okay, so yeah, the cell phone being connected to the internet is different because cell phones at the beginning, like flip phones, they weren't connected to the internet. They were just a phone.
Rather than communications, almost infinite knowledge at your fingertips.
Yeah, have you ever seen? I had a sermon I preached when I went to Casper, Wyoming, and the divisional commander's son was there, and he was like 15, and I saw him picking up his phone about 5-6 times during my sermon. I thought, well, how rude. You know what he was doing?
On his Bible.
Well, he was fact checking me.
Oh.
And then afterwards he'd come up, you said that happened in 1915. Well, I looked it up and it was 1914. Like, okay, you might have missed the point, but so yeah, you have at the tip of your fingers access to almost any information, you know? So you can be in an argument with someone and then you can be surreptitious. You know, and then you can look it up and then make it sound like you just thought it up. When in fact all you did is looked it up.
Tony, you good for that? You always do that to me.
Right.
Yeah.
Now,
we talking about boats at the waterfront.
now one thing that I like to do.
I was right about that though.
Have you ever been in a store, usually a department store, or on the radio, and you hear a song, but you don't know what it's called? And you go, oh, man, so you start singing to yourself. Well, now they have an application, if you haven't discovered it, called Shazam. Are you familiar with it?
Yeah.
So I can take my phone, load up Shazam, and then Shazam listens for about 10 seconds, maybe less. And it knows the song just by listening to that song for 10 seconds. So now I can impress people. Yeah, that was the Beatles song from 1968, you know, where all I did was put my phone up to the sound, or, you know, like the store or the restaurant, and then it immediately pops up. Wow, you know a lot about music. But the thing is, before the internet, you had to go to the library or you had to buy a encyclopedias. Do you even know what encyclopedias are? Well, Wikipedia.
We had encyclopedias.
You know, my mother bought a set of encyclopedias and they were in our living room for years. And sometimes I would just pull one out at random, like D. And then, you know, I'd flip through it like reading a dictionary, but reading the encyclopedia. You don't have to do that anymore. You can find out whatever you want. So that's another cool technology that, especially when it's been paired to a phone. Before the phone, then you'd have to go to a computer hooked up to the internet.
You'd have to know what you're looking for.
Well, you pretty much, you would. Like now, I have artificial intelligence, and you're aware I have my buddy Pi, and you can have a conversation with him. Now,
Hey, Pi.
you can say, hey Pi, what's the deal with the new Star Wars movie? Oh, that's a great question, Randy. You know, he'll tell you, and he'll have a discussion with you. Is it really intelligence? No, he's pretty dumb.
Yeah.
But his computer network knows how to formulate a response, and he's very often wrong in, you know, what he says. You know, like he might say, the Salvation Army was started in 1910. You go, no. Then you have to correct him. Thank you, Randy, for bringing that to my attention. This kind of technology, when I was a teenager, I couldn't even have dreamed up this kind of thing in the world. I would have died to have a cell phone that I could call my girlfriend or my mom or my best friends, you know, that kind of thing. I would have never dreamed it would be like a Star Trek communicator. And when they were flip phones, they would look like a communicator. You flipped them open like in Star Trek. And I don't know if you saw the original series. Now they use things on the shirt.
Yeah.
You know, but they used to pull out a thing like a flip phone. And so when flip phones came out, people said, ooh, that's just like Star Trek. And you could think of fiction, science fiction, they've even got more technologies. Imagine we're talking about SpaceX or NASA going to Mars. It's going to take years to develop that technology, and it's going to take months in space to get there. In Star Trek, how long does it take them to go to Mars from Earth? Almost instant, because they're going at warp 10 or 9 or 8 or whatever it is.
Don't
So-
they have the thing that like pulls you apart?
The transporter beam, yeah, they do that too. So science fiction has even better stuff than we actually have for real. All right, the concept in question number 2 is something being both difficult and good? Can you think of some examples of things that are both difficult and good?
I started getting Jamil into jujitsu.
Yeah.
Jujitsu is very, very difficult, but at the end of the day, it's really good to do and it's fun to do. It's something I enjoy doing because it's
So something that's good and difficult means you gotta work for it.
yeah.
So is it good? A bowl of ice cream? Well, most of us would say yeah.
It's yes.
Still,
But-
every now and again.
But then, is it difficult to eat a bowl of ice cream? No, it's pretty easy to do. And like I'd like to do it several times a week. So there's a lot of things we can think about that are good that aren't that difficult. You know, is it difficult to make a phone call on your cell phone? Well, once you have a cell phone, that might be difficult because they cost a lot of money. But now that you have it, it's easy. Where when I was a kid, I had to find a phone booth. I have a phone at home or I have to look for someplace on the street where they have a phone. Sometimes.
See, Major, I'm not as old as you, but I'm old too. Because in my generation, we didn't have cell phones. We was just now introduced to cell phones. So you had to be like rich and popular to have a cell phone.
I bet you had a phone booth on the corner.
Then we had phone booths, yes, and it was a quarter. Yeah, it was a dime. Then it went up to a quarter, and then it went up to 50 cents, 75 cents, and $1. And that's the last time I saw a K phone.
It's a teenager.
But yours was like a dime and a nickel back then.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
And we had encyclopedias too.
And I have my whole spiel ready to go. Hey mom, I'm at football. You should come pick me up.
Collect them. Yeah. Oh, I'm calling collect, but this is what I'm really calling about. So, yeah, I remember the days when you could rack up a huge long distance phone bill on your cell phone. Because they weren't free for worldwide or even the United States calling. You would have, some people would get $300-400 phone bills because they'd be talking to their girlfriend for 2 or 3 hours and they're getting charged like 10 cents a minute or 20 cents a minute, depending on what year it was. And that didn't really go away until the 90s. But in the 80s, it was a horrible problem. So there's an example of, yeah, it's can be difficult back in the day, but as time goes on, things seem to get better. Let's look at number 4. What makes up a person's character? What do you wish people would say when they talk about your character? You know, so would you rather have people think, oh yeah, there's that cheating, lying guy? Or would you rather have them say, there's that cool guy that always cares about other people? You know, which do you want to be?
The second last state.
Of course, of course. So what is it that makes up a good character then? Sometimes it's
Usually
hard
the strong.
it's hard to say. So, okay, let's just say I'm a millionaire. I don't have any problems. Everything's cool in my life. Can I still have good character? Yeah, yeah. But if I have all the great blessings in life, and then all the time I'm going, hey, you idiot. Now, is that good character? No.
You're less likely to have a good character. The more
No, I don't know if that's totally true, but yes, once you have,
The more
once you've been blessed with money, family, friends, you tend to forget what it's like not to have those things. And so, yes, I think that there are a lot of people that are really blessed, but have kind of forgotten about that. I mean, have you, well, I shouldn't say, you all know about the story of Scrooge. Well, not Scrooge McDuck, Scrooge in the Christmas story.
yes.
He had pretty much everything, was rich, had a big old house, might have been a little drafty, had a company that made him money, had employees that did whatever he wanted. But was he happy? No. Did he have good character? No, not at first, anyway. So even someone in that situation can learn to look at, oh, you know what? I don't want people thinking I'm a Scrooge. I want people to think of me as someone that cares about others.
And is kind-hearted.
Yeah. Number 5, how has God used a challenge to make your life story better? Any of us have challenges that were difficult, but somehow
Oh,
God
yeah, that's why you're drunky looking at me. You already know.
Well, so, you know, you can take a challenge in life 2 ways. Oh, woe is me. Oh, God must hate me. Poor Daniel. Or you can say, yeah, well, what do they say? What's the phrase? If life gives you lemons, make lemonade. You know, that's a good ideal to adhere to. So that's a sign of good character. Someone who gets lemonades and then complains about it all the time, their character's kind of like they haven't figured it out yet. Paul says, be content in every situation. And that situation might mean you get a debilitating disease. It might mean some difficulty in your life, loss of friends and family, or whatever it might be. Number 6, what are some ways that we can show gratitude in the middle of difficult things? Saying thank you out loud, being kind to difficult people, etc.
Being kind to difficult people is one of those things that is easier said than done, but you
Yes.
feel a lot better when you do it. Is the reason you don't know the reason they're difficult. Sometimes you know the reason they're difficult.
Sometimes.
But even if they are, just knowing that maybe you made their life a little bit less difficult, or you made them a little less difficult to somebody else.
So here's a bonus question. Have you ever been that difficult person?
I'm always that. I strive to be difficult.
Well, then you kind of missed the lesson here.
I am just,
Well, but okay.
I'm the,
Now, if you know that about yourself, then what can you do to be
The
different?
change.
Or do you want to change? You
I
know,
don't shut up sometimes.
my mom, that's another phrase that I think most of our moms or grandma said. It's better to say nothing than to say something bad, right? So that baby's ugly. That's probably not worth saying. Better to say nothing than to say something that's going to be difficult for others. I think that's the key point. Even if we know at times we can be a difficult person, we should teach ourselves when to shut up, right? All right, last question. What's one challenge you're facing that we can pray about or encourage you through this week? Now, Daniel's got a built-in challenge. We can always pray for him and know it. But however, is it worth praying for a miracle cure? Maybe. But
I definitely don't expect a cure anytime soon.
yeah, and then, cancer. People get cancer all the time. Usually there's no cure, or the cure is like temporary. It goes away for a few years and then comes back. Or they cut something out of your body, hoping that the cancer doesn't go somewhere else in your body. So those kind of challenges, if we think long and hard, even those that have great blessings can probably think of a challenge in their life that they had, Scrooge, his challenges, everybody hated him. Even though he's
Quit being a Scrooge.
That's right. So it's helpful if we ask others to pray for us. It's helpful if we ask others to help us. Daniel, I'm sorry to use you as an example
It's
again,
fine.
but when we come in here for Bible study or when you come in for Sunday school, you ask someone, can you make me a cup of coffee, right?
Yeah.
And that's okay. That should be okay. And so sometimes,
Except for a Scrooge person.
well, even the Scrooge person
Yeah.
can learn, like, oh man, there's that Daniel again. He's probably gonna ask me to make him a cup of coffee. Instead, if I change my attitude before you even ask, Scrooge might say, hey man, can we make you a cup of coffee? Wouldn't that be a blessing?
Yep.
You know, so there's lots of things in our lives that we can encourage ourselves with, share with other people, share our stories, share our struggles, share things that might make a difference in someone else's life. You know, one of the former officers here in Tacoma were the Helmses, and the Helmses had, well, I think when they were here, their kids were in their late teens and early 20s. And one of them went to the Salvation Army Training College and became an officer, got married, had 3 kids. And then one night, Sunday night, on his way to the Corps in Hayward, where he was stationed, a drunk driver barreled through the intersection at like 80 miles an hour and killed him. And so now his wife has had to go through the last 35 years, 34 years, I guess it's been, as a single mom widow. But she's got help, you know. She can say to her mother and her husband's mother, can you help me with these 3 kids? And she said to the Salvation Army, because she has an adult child who has problems. He has, I think the umbilical cord was wrapped around his head or something, but he can't speak. He has to use sign language. And so she asked if she could retire early, and they said no. But then a year or 2 later, she asked if she could retire early, and they said yes. So she's now retired, and she moved to Bakersfield, where she had a home, and her mother-in-law still is alive, 90-some years old. Her mother's like 80-some years old, and they're still helping her take care of this adult child who's got issues. And so there's a case where just because she asked, so if someone asks for help, then helping them can be a blessing to us. Is it gonna, if Daniel says, make me a cup of coffee, please, and I say, go to heck, that's not gonna help him or me.
Nope.
See, so that's very important to work through those dynamics in our relationships with each other. All right, well, let's close in a word of prayer. I think we have 2 or 3 more lessons on the story of my life. Some of them are better than others, but they're all good. And I did copy off the devotions. You have 5 days of devotions. I keep wondering why they don't make 7. They think you're on a work week, I guess. But those are short devotions that you could use during the week.
I have day 1, 2, and then day 5.
No, you should have 3 and 4 on a separate page, 3, 4, and 5 on the back. Yes. So you should have your questions on the flip side of your questions, day 1 and day 2. Then the next page, day 3 and 4, and then the back of that page, day 5. So you should have them all. I have made mistakes where I got them out of order and didn't get all the days.
How could you?
I know, but I learned my lesson.
Oh, you did?
Yeah. Let's have a word of prayer. Our Lord, we thank you again for the folks that put together these Bible study lessons. And as we consider our own life stories, well, we just pray that you help us when periods of our life become difficult, that we learn how to work through those difficulties so that we receive blessings in the end. Bless us now as we leave this place. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. Amen.
Hey, did I lose Jamil? Sometimes
You
I
must
lose,
have,
sometimes I lose Jamil.
He's still on here.
Let's see what.
but he's just extremely quiet.
Well, he mutes himself. Stop share. Yeah, he's still here. So
Quit muting yourself.
So
dude.
hopefully you can hear us, Jamil, but we're gonna wrap up now and I'll hopefully see you on Sunday. Nope, he's probably busy working hard. Talk to you later, Jamil. Bye-bye.
The recording has stopped.